Hello and welcome, everyone. Welcome to Rappler Talk. My name is Happy Ferrarin from Rappler Plus, and joining me today, fresh from the announcement, is of course Rappler CEO Maria Ressa. Very surreal moment for all of us right now. Back-to-back meetings. Maria, we just heard the announcement that you have been awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. After with 329 nominations. Some of those were people who were nominated for the work that they did with a vaccine to help fight this pandemic, and yet journalists were the ones who took home the prize. Courage won, and you won. Congratulations. Why do you think this is so?
So I don't think this is me. I think this is Rappler. I look. I have. We have all long said this since 2016 that we are fighting for facts, and when we live in a world where facts are debatable, when the world's largest distributor of news prioritizes the spread of lies laced with anger and hate and spreads it faster and further than facts, then journalism becomes activism. And that's the transformation that we've gone through in Rappler, that we were on quicksand trying to figure out, how do we do what we do? How can journalists continue the mission of journalism? Why is it so difficult to continue telling the community, telling the world what the facts are, right? So in a battle for facts, I guess what this just shows is um, that the Nobel Peace Prize Committee realized that a world without facts means a world without truth and trust. And if you don't have any of those things, you certainly can't conquer coronavirus. You can't conquer climate change. I've been saying this over and over, and it feels a little bit like, Sisyphus rolling the rock up the hill. And when you get attacked in the process of trying to roll the rock up the hill, you just kind of dodge, you keep going. And um, it's a shock. But the fact that a journalist from the Philippines and a journalist from Russia won the Nobel Peace Prize tells you about the state of the world today and the state of the Philippines.
Right. Maria, you mentioned being a journalist and how that changed. I'm curious to know, how has the role of journalism changed? You've been a journalist for more than 30 years. The role of journalist, as the one speaking truth to power, now having to guard facts. How has this changed? You mentioned a while ago, journalism has become sort of like activism. So, in the 30 years that you've been working as a journalist, what were these key changes that you saw with regard to the role of what a journalist should be doing?
This is my 35th year as a journalist. So I'm old. And I think, it helped that I was old, along with the other co-founders of Rappler. We knew why we were doing what we were doing. We understood the standards and ethics and the vision of journalism. And so when we came under attack, um, there wasn't really any other choice. The phrase we use is hold the line, because you have to, here's the line. On this side, you're good. On this side, you're evil. And we in Rappler decided that we were going to hold that line, on the good. Look, in less than 2 years, the Philippine government has filed 10 arrest warrants against me. Um, it was pretty bleak at different times, but I really continued to believe that we need to continue shining the light. We need to continue doing accountability journalism. We needed to continue the focus on the formally, right, corruption, potential corruption investigations. We were part of OCCRP, global investigations that helped us find the roots of these, of wrongdoing, of anomalous deals that we're living through. The Pandora Papers, which we just published along with ICIJ and PCIJ, allowed us to show you that, this is gray and could be exploited, and it is public sector and private sector. Journalism has never been as important as it is today, and yet it is so difficult to do the job that we had set out. in order to keep doing what we're doing. Rappler lives with the possibility of a shutdown on a daily basis. You know, we're on quicksand, and yet at the same time, if you keep the North Star ahead of you, you know, you protect the facts, you hold power to account, you exercise the rights that is in the Philippine Constitution. That's what we did, and that's what we'll keep doing.
So, Maria, you were given this award because of the inextricable link of journalism and democracy. But what does this mean for peace? How does this relate to the the path to peace?
Nothing is possible without facts. Even though facts are really boring, everything begins with a shared reality that is defined by facts. And what we've seen is as journalists lost our gatekeeping powers to technology platforms, what they did is they took kind of the normal, you know, I did television when we were handling a primetime newscast. We knew that if we put all of the crime and entertainment stories in that primetime newscast, we would get high ratings. But because we're journalists, we also knew that we had to put the vegetables. We would send a flyaway to Holo because it is necessary for our public to know that. All of that went away when technology took over as the gatekeeper. And I think that's an existential crisis, not just for journalists, not just for Philippine democracy, but globally. And I've said this, this what has happened in our information ecosystem, this virus of lies that has been introduced through the algorithms of the social media platforms. It infects real people and changes, and I compare it to an atom bomb exploding in our information ecosystem, and that the world must come together like it did after World War II to solve this problem. What did they do? They created the United Nations. They created the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. This is that kind of moment. And I don't know how we in the Philippines will have integrity of elections if guardrails aren't put in place around the social media platforms. The journalists will continue doing our jobs, but there are always repercussions if you do a story someone doesn't like. I think what our public has realized is that Rappler will keep doing those stories. Journalists will keep doing those stories, and that's what I hope. That's what I hope will give us more power to do this.
Maria, you mentioned the tech companies and how we need to hold them accountable. This is not the first time you're saying this. In fact, you say this all the time, and you have
I'm
raised
tired of it,
this.
right?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. You've raised this to Mark Zuckerberg himself, and they didn't act. Do you think this will change things? Do you think people will start listening and will start looking at the story of the Philippines and taking it seriously? What might the impact of this award be on that, on their ability to listen and act on things that don't happen in US grounds?
It's very hard. So, right off the top, there is a watershed moment in the United States with a new whistleblower, Francis Haugen, coming forward with internal documents of Facebook. It showed you that the company knew that that it was harming people, and a U.S. senator. Senator Blumenthal actually said this is a big tobacco moment, right? The tobacco companies knew they were harming people, and yet they continued selling and selling to kids. Well, I've long said, because our data has long showed us, right? In 2016, one of the pieces I wrote was how Facebook algorithms impact democracy. This was part of the reason that we were attacked, because we exposed the propaganda machine that was connected to President Duterte, to the Duterte administration. We exposed in 2019 the Marcos disinformation networks that are working on Facebook and on YouTube. So I think this will give more impetus, because again, every society will want facts. And the fact that it is so difficult as a journalist to give you the facts, not just to create it because it's expensive to do that, but to actually make sure it reaches you, the distribution of it. That's one. I think the second one is, and this is for Philippine government, for the Philippines, right? I have covered every single administration since 1986, and I have never seen such an erosion of the rights that are guaranteed in the Philippine Constitution. I call it out. I have firsthand knowledge of how my rights, my personal rights have been abused, how a president could target me on nationwide addresses. That's kind of insane if you think about it. But that is what we have also exposed. We have shown that this asymmetrical power, when the state's power is focused on journalists, that the way you fight back is by doing your job, right? We also know that our future will be determined by how well we do our jobs today. So as we move into Philippine elections, there is a time for accountability. The Constitution is very clear. I hope that we see the different branches of government regain the power that has been given to them and move away from patronage driven politics.
Right. Maria, I just want to ask, at the top of your head, I want to understand the journey of how you got here. If you could name major events in the major global events that led us here, that the Peace Prize is awarded to a journalist and a journalist in the Philippines. How did we get here? What were those major moments that happened globally that pushed the awarding committee to give you this award?
I mean, it's hard to answer that question, but I think what I'll just say is I've done a lot of stories in 35 years, but the two biggest stories out of the Philippines always had to do with how the Philippines was the testing ground for attacks against the West. And this is the 9/11 attacks. I was in Jakarta the evening that happened. And when I saw the plane crash into the World Trade Center, it was a memory for me because I had read it from an intelligence document, an interrogation report of a man who was probably the first pilot recruited by Al Qaeda. His name was Abdul Hakim Murad, and he was arrested in the Philippines in 1995. He talked about hijacking planes and crashing them into buildings. He named the World Trade Center, he named the Sears building in Chicago, and buildings in San Francisco, as well as the Pentagon, right? So these men who took down the World Trade Center, who were behind, who were the front, the tip of the arrow of Al Qaeda in taking down American power, tested airport security here in the Philippines. That was a huge story in my career because it defined the next decade of the stories I'd be working on. I worked with CNN's investigative team into the terrorist networks. The second huge story is what we are living through now. And yet again, we are a testing ground. The Cambridge Analytica whistleblower, Christopher Wiley, called the Philippines the petri dish, right? The most number of compromised accounts in the Cambridge Analytica scandal was the United States. The country with the second most number was the Philippines. Um, Facebook itself said that we were ground zero, right? Agreed with that. So, what is happening here? We are being insidiously manipulated in what has become a behavior modification system. And this is part of what you are hearing being exposed at the US Senate by Facebook's former employee, a former product manager, Francis Haugen. Um, this is our world today. And so I guess, why the Philippines? I think part of it is because we're English speaking. We adapt to the technology. We have similar technology as the West. But I think more than that, we live in different worlds. So, how do I track this? I just go back to this moment that is so existential, the defense of our democracy in the Philippines, the defense of our rights, human rights, the fact that we have no idea exactly how many people have been killed in a brutal drug war. You have in plain view, you see the police rolling back the numbers from 7,000 to 2,000. That was in 2017. And we go to 2021, and you have human rights groups saying that it's tens of thousands, 30,000 plus, when you have the police saying something completely different. This hall of mirrors has to change, and a time of accountability does come. And I think that what we have to do as journalists is to just hold the line.
Hold the line. This is also something that Rappler and Maria that you always say all the time. Having said that, with this award, do you think this will change the perception of people who are skeptical about the media? So, the media has been demonized and attacked in the past how many years? We're at the front lines. We see it every on a daily basis. All those comments. Is this award gonna change that? Are people gonna start trusting media again, or what do you think? What do you think will happen?
The failure of trust is a byproduct of the failure of facts and the manipulation of our public. I mean, again, you go back to what is the core problem. When journalists are not blameless in this. We certainly are humans. Here's where the tech platforms are wrong because they claim that AI will do better. AI is programmed by humans with their biases who are not accountable to the public. This is the biggest problem that we have now. That the technology, E.O. Wilson, I also always say this, E.O. Wilson, who's an American biologist, said he studies emergent behavior. And what he said is that the crisis we are facing now are our Paleolithic emotions, our medieval institutions, and our godlike technology. So take a look at all of that, right? When you don't have facts, you don't have truth, you don't have trust. Trust is what holds us together to be able to solve the complex problems our world is facing today. So, when you attack the media, oftentimes it's about shooting the messenger. Um, we're trying to solve that in many different ways, but the recognition of how difficult it is to be a journalist today uh, is this is for you, Rappler, and I hope energy for all of us to continue the battle for facts.
Maria, let's zoom in a little bit on your experience. Again, 35 years as a journalist. What does this award mean for you? There was a question sent in. Do you feel vindicated? Does this drive you to how will this affect your career now?
I'm not sure. My phone is just exploding. It's like I think we just keep doing what we're doing. We have a lot of work ahead of us. We're just beginning the election season in the Philippines. Rappler has three pillars: technology, journalism, and community. Technology, we are building a platform where we will build a community around facts and evidence-based reasoning. I'm also part of different groups that are demanding legislation globally. The Forum for Information and Democracy, based out of Paris, we came up with a white paper that we published in November 2020 to look for structural solutions because these are structural problems. And that's the other thing that's very clear, right? These algorithms divide us and radicalize us. On the second part, on independent journalism, we're not only working in the Philippines to continue doing that, but I think this is an existential moment for independent media. And that's part of the reason that I accepted a co-chair along with Mark Thompson, who's the former CEO of the New York Times, of the International Fund for Public Interest Media, to try to raise money so that we are going to be able to help independent media survive. And then finally, and this isn't the least of it, right? But the community. I don't think Rappler could have survived without all the support that we received in the last, it's going to be 6 years soon, in the last 5.5 years. Our communities of action, Rappler's elevator pitch in 2011 is we build communities of action. So here we go. We're entering our 10th year in January, and our communities of action, we must stick to that mission of facts, evidence-based reasoning, so that we can create the world we want to live in.
Maria, there are so many people greeting you. I'm sure you're getting it on your phone as well. It's all over our comment section. It's good to see good comments in our comment section. People saying, "Oh, this is well deserved. You are such an inspiration." After a culture of being silenced, a culture of fear and impunity being prevalent in the Philippines and in many places in the world, this is a win for you, for journalists, for Rappler, and for courage. I guess I'd like to end with you. What is your personal message to everybody out there afraid to speak up, who might want to be a journalist but are having second thoughts? What are the things that keep you going? What do you tell yourself? And how and share it with everyone else who's watching you and saying that you are their inspiration.
So first of all, there is no better time to be a journalist. You know, the times when it's most dangerous is the times when it's most important, right? So this is the best time to be a journalist. If you're just starting out, this is journalism will test you mentally, so intellectually, physically, spiritually, morally. Um, you learn to draw the lines. I'm in the middle of writing a book that is with my editor now. It's called How to Stand Up to a Dictator. But every chapter in this is about a micro, a personal lesson, and then a macro, right? A big. The title of the chapter is a big lesson. So, like an example, I talk about social media platforms, but um, this one is about the algorithms that manipulate us. One chapter's title is how friends of friends killed democracy, and then the subtitle of that is think slow, not fast. We now live in this world where you're being pushed to take more in. There's like a fire hose coming your way. It is changing our youth. It is changing us. It is creating new behavior where we are uncivilized, where we don't have respect for each other, thinking fast. That part of the emotional part of you that's being manipulated by the algorithms. So think slow, not fast. Let your your thinking mind come through. uh I guess the last part is just that's a moment that the entire world needs to look at. How do we get back to a world that has technology working within the framework of democracy? How do we get back to a world where the technology that delivers the news to us is governed by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights? How do we get back the things that have made humanity resilient? Because in this information ecosystem, it will tear us apart. So I think this just gives renewed energy for we're on the right path. We keep going.
So let's ride that wave of energy and joy. Thank you so much, Maria Ressa. I know you have so many other interviews to go to. Thank you, everyone, for watching this first interview straight from the announcement of the 2021 Nobel Peace Prize. Our winner, Maria Ressa. Thank you. Thank you for all that you do, and to all the journalists also who continue to hold the line with us, as well as our community, our Rappler Plus community. Thank you so much for staying strong with us. And to everyone else, this is Happy Fararen, and this is Rappler Talk.